Snow crunched beneath her frozen feet so loudly it felt as if the entire forest wanted to betray her. The girl ran between the dark pine trees, gasping for icy air. The sharp wind tore at her thin prison uniform, piercing her skin like needles. Every movement sent pain through her chest. She could no longer feel her fingers. Only fear. Fear drove her forward faster than any wild animal. Somewhere far behind her, men were shouting. Sometimes the wind carried the sound of barking dogs. Her pursuers were getting closer. She stumbled over roots, fell into the snow, then forced herself back up. Branches whipped across her face, leaving scratches. Her lungs burned with every breath. Just don't stop. But her body was no longer obeying her. 3 days earlier, she had escaped from a prison transport during a blizzard. Back then, she thought the forest would save her. Now, the forest was slowly killing her. She had no strength left. She ran onto a small snow-covered clearing and collapsed into the snow. The freezing white cold wrapped around her as if winter itself wanted to put her to sleep. The girl tried to get up. She couldn't. Everything blurred before her eyes. The voices of her pursuers faded into the distance. Only the wind remained, swaying the tops of the trees. She closed her eyes. And suddenly, very close nearby, she heard a dog bark. Loud, close, unfamiliar. Then came the heavy sound of footsteps crunching through the snow. And darkness swallowed her completely.
He had lived alone for many years. The old cabin stood deep in the forest, far away from people. In winter, the world around it became an endless white sea of silence. He liked that silence. No Chuzhak voices, no lies, no noise from cities. Only the forest, the fireplace, and his loyal dog. Every morning was the same: chopping wood, checking traps, carrying water from the frozen river. And somehow, in that simple routine, he felt more alive than ever. That day they went hunting before sunrise. The cold was brutal. Every breath turned into thick white smoke, and the snow creaked beneath their feet like breaking glass. Suddenly, the dog stopped, alert, then bolted forward. "Hey, where are you going?" the man shouted as he ran after him. The dog raced deeper into the woods, as if he had sensed something. A few minutes later, the man saw her. A thin female figure lying in the snow, almost completely buried by the storm. Rags instead of clothes, blue frozen hands, eyelashes covered in frost. She wasn't moving. The dog whimpered softly beside her. The man knelt down and touched her neck. A weak pulse. Alive. Damn. Quickly, he took off his fur coat, wrapped it around her, and carefully lifted her into his arms. She felt almost weightless, as if death itself was already holding her hand. The storm grew stronger. The man held her tighter and carried her back toward the cabin, while the snow erased their tracks behind them.
For the first few days, she barely regained consciousness. She burned with fever. Sometimes she tossed in her sleep, whispering incoherent words. Sometimes she woke suddenly from nightmares, trying to run again, as if someone was still chasing her. He calmed her in silence. He brought her hot herbal tea, changed the cold cloth on her forehead, kept feeding the fire so the cabin stayed warm. The dog rarely left her side. Blizzards howled outside, but inside the small cabin, life slowly began to return. One morning, she finally opened her eyes properly. He sat near the fireplace, sharpening a knife. "You're alive," he said, calmly, without even turning around. She stared at him for a long moment, at his broad shoulders, his tired hands. The man who could have turned her in, but somehow didn't. "Why did you help me?" she asked quietly. The man shrugged. "Because you were freezing." And somehow, that simple answer touched her more deeply than any beautiful words ever could. Weeks passed. She recovered. They cooked together, carried water together, laughed at the dog's antics. In the evenings, they sat beside the fire, and for the first time in many years, the girl felt safe. He taught her how to set traps. She taught him how to smile again. And one night, while a snowstorm raged outside, she gently took his hand, and he never let it go again. By spring, the snow began to melt. The forest came back to life, and with it, her old fears returned. That evening, they sat beside the fire. The girl stared silently into the flames for a long time. Then she quietly said, "I escaped from prison." He didn't interrupt her, didn't seem surprised. He simply listened. She told him everything. How she had been accused of a crime she never committed. How the court found it easier to blame her than search for the truth. How people turned away from her. How the prison convoy had taken her north. And how she decided she would rather die in the forest than rot behind bars. When she finished speaking, the cabin fell silent. "Do you regret saving me?" she asked softly. The man slowly walked toward her, knelt down on one knee, and pulled out an old thin ring that had once belonged to his mother. "Marry me?" She looked at him in shock. "We have nothing. No documents, no people." He smiled gently. "But we have each other." Her lips trembled. For the first time in many years, she cried. That night, they stood beneath the stars in the middle of the forest and promised each other loyalty and love. No wedding, no witnesses, no world around them. Only the forest heard their vows. And that was enough.
8 years passed. The cabin no longer felt lonely. Every morning, children's laughter filled the house. Their daughter had already learned to read and helped her mother teach her little brother to write letters with charcoal on wooden boards. The boy loved running through the forest with the dog, while the girl dreamed of seeing a real city one day. They were happy, truly happy. But one evening, the woman watched the children sleeping beside the fireplace and quietly said, "We can't keep them here forever." He understood that too. The children needed school, friends, a future, and that meant people. And that meant the end of their quiet life. "They'll take you away," the man said quietly. She nodded. "Maybe you too." They sat in silence for a long time. Snow fell softly outside, just like it had the night they first met. The next morning, they began preparing for the journey. When the family finally returned to civilization after so many years, the woman's heart pounded so hard it felt as if she were being escorted by guards once again. But instead of arrest, something unexpected happened. An old police officer looked through the documents for a long moment before suddenly raising his eyes in confusion. "Wait, your case was closed 6 years ago." She froze. "What?" "The real criminal was found a long time ago. You were completely cleared of all charges." The world seemed to stop. Slowly, the woman turned toward her husband, and he simply pulled her into his arms, too tightly for a man who had spent 8 years terrified of losing her. Outside, the city roared with life, loud, strange, alive. But now they were no longer afraid of it, because they had already saved the most important thing, each other.